And at the time, I thought that was a very timely subject, particularly because abstracts are something that you can do in spite of the pandemic. So that's why I named my talk as I did. As I said, I love making abstracts. I've made them for, I don't know, probably since I first started photography. And I have two goals for this talk. One is to give you a broad survey of the types of abstract that I've taken over the years and talk about what I think makes for a successful abstract, at least for me. And I hope maybe I can inspire you and perhaps give you a few ideas for your own abstracts. And I also plan on giving you some technical insight on how I captured some of these images. So when I went to your website, or maybe Elsie sent me this link to your 50-year anniversary book, and I looked at that selection of photos, and I didn't see a lot of abstracts, which is typical, but I did find a couple, and I asked Elsie if I could talk about them in my presentation, and she said yes. So we'll talk a little bit about a couple of your own members' work. So that's kind of my very short introduction. Let's get started. And basically, if you have questions, I would say ask as we go. I don't know, usually the moderator takes, everybody's muted and the moderator can send me questions in the chat box. So if you have questions, feel free to pop in. Uh-oh. Okay, technical difficulties on there. There we go, on my end. Okay, try it again. So I categorize my abstract into several different styles, and I'd like to give you a brief introduction to those categories. The first set of images I'm talking about are ones that I would call visually delightful. So this one and the next one are very graphic images. And these types of images are based on standard design principles and they're taken because they make me happy. I love taking images like this. They're essentially eye candy, basically. So strong graphics, bold color, such as this one and the next one. And then these two combine. Oh, by the way, I'll tell you what these are. This one is a fence and shadows on the beach, which you might be able to guess. This is the side of a barn, these two, a mural on a barn. And then these last two combine a number of things. They have color, they have lines and graphic qualities, but they also have interesting texture. And these are both images of the rusted corrugated aluminum siding that you see like on barns. So these types of abstracts capture the beauty of our world, and basically they make us happy. And that's why I take them personally. So the second type of category is what I would call emotive images. And they're often more subtly visual than the first group, and maybe less exciting from a design point of view. But I like them because they tend to spark an emotional response in people. Most people will look at this first one and see some individual trees in the front and dark woods in the back and maybe snow or rain. This next one, you'll probably see dark trees in a dark sky. And this one to me is much more sinister than the first one. The tree in the middle could be a dark, dark ghost, or this is like a white ghost, and this could be over here. There's a little beak that could be a goblin, so it has almost a Halloweenish feel to it. This third one is a little less obvious, and but in this one I see like a beautiful sunset sky in the top, and a sandy beach here in the bottom, and then an ocean. Sunlit ocean here in the middle. Now, the next image I've always liked, but it doesn't have much to say for it in terms of design quality like some of the others. And I included this image for a specific reason. This is a picture of those gauzy, filmy curtains that were popular when I was growing up. But you hardly ever see them anymore. And I saw them in my mom's house and my grandmother's house. So for me, they create a happy, nostalgic feeling. But the point I want to make is that if you are in my age bracket or you grew up with these kinds of curtains, they can invoke a similar feel in you. But if not, you can look at this image and go, I just don't get it. And this last one here is one of my very favorites. And I love it because it has a mysterious quality that isn't apparent in the other ones. And I'll give you a little story about this one. I entered it into a camera club competition maybe 20 years ago. And after it was posted on the wall, and afterwards, a number of people congregated around the image and they started talking. And one said, I see a beach with two nuns. No, excuse me, I see the back of two nuns' head. And then the next person said, no, I see two posts blocking the way to a beach in waves. And the third person said, no, I see two people looking out over a landscape. And another person said, well, I see King Kong fingers. And I remember at that point thinking that what makes this image particularly successful is that it is suggestive, but it's not complete in its detail. So everybody sees something different, and everybody has to put something into the image. And therefore, it engages us more. And this is the kind of image I really love to make, but I don't make it as often because these are very, very difficult to make. But I happen to particularly love this one. So when I pick images to put in competitions or shows, I tend to pick ones that I think have universal appeal or symbolism, those that I might label are sort of for public consumption. So for this group of 5, this last one I've put in competition. This first one I have. This one is possible, but it's sort of, because it has that Halloweenish feel, it feels limited. This one, these two, I probably wouldn't. And I already talked about this one because it's a limited audience that it might appeal to. And this one is interesting, but it's subtle. And when you're putting things into competition, subtle images don't usually do as well, because a lot of times judges are looking at hundreds of images and they have a second or two for each image. And a subtle image will just get bypassed in that situation. So usually in camera clubs, there's not quite that many that you don't have to suffer from that concern. But certainly some of these big online competitions, that would be of an issue.
Barbara,
yeah.
I found the image of the curtains to be really drawing me in, and I grew up in that same era where my mom had curtains like that, but I wasn't drawn to it for that reason. It's just the layers that are involved to me. There's obviously an inside and an outside, and the waves of the curtains that echo the shadows of the rail on the curtains, and I guess the reality of the rail outside and the curtains. So there's just lots of layers, the trees beyond. So it's speaking to me in different ways, even though I'm from that same era.
Yeah, it's like the other one before it. It is a subtle image, so it's better when you can spend some time looking at it versus speeding through a bunch of images. But yes, thank you. I'm glad you like it. I do too. And you're right. It does have more compositional guts than maybe I give it credit for.
Also, the chair does look like chairs to me. But whether they're chairs or not, might be the chairs that my grandmother had at her house. But I want to mention that if someone doesn't know what they're looking at off the top with a photograph, most people will not care much for it off the top too. And some judges and just regular people that look at photographs are like that. I've submitted several photographs from my travels, and they have no clue where it is. It looks kind of odd to them. So, or they're not sure how you made it. And someone doesn't understand your photograph pretty quickly unless they're very mindful, then likely they're going to disregard it.
Yeah.
I would think that everyone would recognize that as a window and a curtain and a railing outside. To me, it's immediately recognizable. But I agree with Mike's point.
Yeah, one of my biggest pet peeves about judges that I used to hear when I did camera club competition, when I participated as a entered into camera club competitions, were judges that said, "I don't know what it is, it's out." And I just thought that was lack of imagination or something, right? Does it really matter what it is? This is this is not about. We're not doing documentary photography here. It's a much broader type of image that you want to promote, I think, in camera clubs. So yeah, some very good points there.
I have a couple comments.
Yes.
First is, I was a child in the 1950s. I very much recognize that image of the gauzy window treatment. I notice it's in color. It's not a monochrome.
No, it is. You're right. It's actually, you know what it is? It's infrared.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it's an infrared.
Oh, okay. And the second comment, if you can go back to I like that one right in the middle best of all.
Oh, good.
Maybe it's too subtle, but apparently I like some.
I think these are more interesting if you're going to look and think about images, right? I mean, like some in this first category, those are all interesting images and fun, but there's not the same kind of depth to them that I think these types of images have. And that's what I'm talking about, having an emotive quality. And I think that's really hard. A lot of judges have a hard time. They talk about, basic design principles, the standard rules of composition. But in the long run, I think most of us photograph to express ourselves and our emotions. And but it is hard to talk about images like this. So, but thank you. I'm glad you like it. This is going to be a fun conversation, I can tell.
Another question on these images, the last one, I'm wondering and guessing what that actually is. And to me, it looks like a piece of metal with some, half circle areas milled out of it. So,
you know what? I think you're the first person that got even close to guessing what this is. It's actually a sculpture in a local sculpture park here in New Jersey, and it's taken with a close-up with a long, like 300 millimeter lens. So that's how you get that, stacked perspective. And you're right. Here's the corner. This little line here is the corner, right. And this is one side. Those are the dips.
Yeah. Every bit of it just screamed to me metallic. Whether it's the top or the insides or the side, it's metallic all the way.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
I put this one into competition many years ago. Actually, it wasn't a competition. It was a critique. And the judge was somebody I really admired. He was a reporter for Philadelphia Inquirer. And he actually, I think, had participated in one of the Pulitzer Prizes that the Inquirer won. And so when he got to this image, he just sat there for like 30 seconds or so. And, my stomach is churning at that point. And then he just said, "This should be in a gallery." And I thought, oh my God, that's the best kind of compliment you can get. So anyway, that's probably one of my all-time favorites. And like I said, it's mysterious. People see different things. And I think it really engages the viewer in a way that it's hard to do when you take a photograph. It's more hit or miss than intentional, I think, for some in general. And if there's no other questions on this set, I'm going to talk about a couple of images from your camera club, actually. Are we ready to move on?
May I ask one more question?
Yeah.
On that middle one, I'm like Daryl, I really like that. Is that an actual beach shot that you have?
No, I meant to tell you what all of these are. These two you'll see later, and I'll describe them in more detail. But this is actually, if you turn it sideways, this is in my house. It's looking out a window. This is fall colors, like a vine and a house behind it on the right. This is a kind of a bare limbs tree that I had in my house. And this is the window frame right here.
And to achieve that effect, you did that through Photoshop or whatever, through.
No, this is pretty much out of the camera, believe it or not. I think there's motion. There's a little bit of motion in it. That's how I get that look. Okay. It's been so long since I took this one. I don't remember exactly how I took it, but it was a blur kind of movement, right? Shaking the camera as you photograph.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Is that a common practice of yours to shake your photograph to get that look?
You know what? Depending on the year, yes or no. So I go through phases with, camera movement. And I think this one I actually took for a class where we were doing things like go out and practice camera movement, right? So, but I was amazed to get this. Certainly, I didn't expect this as I was photographing it. It was only after I took it that I said, oh my God. So, all right. Any other questions?
It's a great example of how one image can remind you of something entirely different. I mean, again, I look at it and it's a beach, period.
Yeah.
I've got a little comment related to what your problem with judges. I don't think you can see the title. This is a book I just got. The title is Photo No Nos.
Oh, okay.
Over 300 pages long. It has over 200 contributors, each of whom is telling you about what they don't like or what they've had told about their photos that people don't like.
Oh, interesting.
From Aperture.
So, okay. I'll have to see if I can find that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple from your camera club. This was one in your 50th anniversary, I guess, book. And I guess it's by Ruth Gogol. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but hopefully that's close enough.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
She titled it The Dance. And it's a very appropriate title, as you can tell, because you immediately see these dancers. And I just think this is a fabulous image. It's the dancers are very feminine and soft. I love the lines in this background here, these little waves. It just has such an incredible beauty about it that I think it's joyful. It's hard. How can you not love this image? But it's one of those where you could look at it and go, I don't know what it is. It's out.
A little bit about Ruth. She's about 94 years old. She photographs what she wants to photograph, and she particularly likes what you're talking about tonight.
Oh, good.
Barbara, I just sent you a link, the direct link to a competition we had, so you could see more of our. We had a theme that was abstract last year, so I sent you.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to use that or not, that's your call. But I just sent it to you by chat.
All right. If we have time, I can maybe look at it later.
Whatever works for you.
And then I actually wanted to talk about this one from Elsie. And when I said I wanted to use it, she said, well, I didn't think that was an abstract. And I said, well, to me, this has a lot of abstraction in it. A lot of the things about abstracts that I like, one of the things is that you can get a lot of images from one image, so to speak. If you take this image and you crop it and you kind of eliminate the cues that give you a sense of what it is, the bowl and the table it's on, then the abstract quality comes out much stronger. And you can see, it has these beautiful textures and lines in it, these curls. It's very muted and soft colors. And so I think that is beautiful in and of itself. But then you can also crop it further. And in this image, what I see a woman's eye and her head, right? And she's peeking out from behind a bush. But I also see, here's a dog's eye with a floppy ear. But I also see, here's the elephant and his trunk. And it's just kind of amazing what is in this one little part of the image that Elsie took. So I love the fact that you can see this so many ways so easily.
So now, Elsie, you have 2 more photographs.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't see all of that. I'll have to look at it again myself.
You know what? That's kind of what you learn when you start judging, is you get to the point where you can point out what's in some of these images. And a lot of times people don't actually see what they've taken. They don't recognize the good in their own images. And it's very hard. We're visual people. We're not verbal. So it's harder for us to talk about our images in a way that particularly around the emotional elements in images.
Thinking about Elsie's original composition without cropping it, to me, it's a perfect example of wabi-sabi, which is the beauty of transience, basically. You've got this modern angles in whatever room, house it's in, and it's obviously a plant that's been left a while, and it's beautiful. You can see more animals and ears and imagine other things as well. I love it.
Yeah, it's a fabulous image.
First thought I had when seeing it was Salvador Dali.
Oh, yeah, that's a great inspiration as well. So I've kind of talked about my philosophy of abstracts. That's that part of the talk. And for the rest of these images, I'll talk mostly about what they are and how I got them. And I'll start picking up the pace in terms of going through them a little bit more quickly, because there's a lot. And so in keeping with the title of the talk, COVID-proof images, these are ones that I titled In and Around the House. And this first set is it's interesting. If we walk around our house, most of us would say, absolutely nothing in my house to photograph. And this series is basically a wall in my house and a ceiling. And it's all pretty much in this, that peak is pretty much the same peak through all of these. Now, this one, you can tell, has been Photoshopped. That's the original that it was taken from. And I love this original, but I wouldn't put it in competition because, again, it has a subtle quality that tends to get overlooked in a lot of competitions. So I ended up adding this texturizing to it, and I put it in a local show, and it was accepted. So sometimes you can work these images to, even if you like the subtlety of these types of images, you can, prepare them so that they do a little bit better in shows and competitions. But I find this fascinating. This is all about light. That's all it's about, right? And a few lines.
Did you photograph the texture?
I don't know if this is. I think I got it from somewhere. It might be Nick's software that has it, but I don't think it's my photograph. I think
I get texture. I've just never resonated to it. I have to tell you. But I've got a comment about all the wall and see. Those are out of camera. Use lighting.
Pretty much. I've been cleaned up a little bit, right? Little nicks in the walls and things like that.
Yeah.
But like this one was taken. I think this is taken at night with lamplight shadows.
Yeah.
This one was taken, I think, in the early morning. And this window, this corner happened to be in the middle of the house, and so there was a window in the front and a window in the back that would shine light on it. So I think this is the morning shot. I don't know when I took that one, what time of day. This one was probably evening shot.
I like that.
And that's the sun coming through. That's the front door. Sun coming through and casting a little bit of very soft shadow on it. And then that one was, I don't know, maybe about the same time because the shadows look about the same. It's just the colorations are very different.
Did you soften it with Photoshop?
No, that was probably a mistake, so to speak. That was a happy mistake.
Barbara, when you do these, do you plan them? And I have some of the same ideas in the house with the way the light hits, but the sun moves fast. So I may see a shadow or a line that I like, and that means I've wasted time looking at it too long, and I'll have to come back the next day and set up my camera. Are you having those experiences? Or are you really able to be spontaneous?
You know what? I have learned to shoot very quickly. Okay. So if I see something, I will shoot fast. But in this particular case, I was lucky because I had sunlight and sunrise and sunset, so to speak, and lamp work. So I had a lot of different lights that were just naturally occurring on this set, and that made it a little bit easier. So any other questions? Okay, this next set is what I call drive-by shooting. And this is, somebody asked about how often I take motion. Sometimes when I'm in my car, but riding as a passenger, I'm not driving, I take pictures like this. And it's just, you take a bunch, most of them you throw away, but every once in a while you get kind of a winner. And I like this one. It's sort of, this is a bridge, I think, that we were passing close to. And it sort of feels like, this to me is COVID, right? It's a big black cloud over the city, so to speak. This was from the same trip. And then this one was actually taken on the highway at night, obviously. And these little tendrils are raindrops that the wind was blowing and pushing them up the windshield. And then that one you've seen before. Oh, excuse me. That one you've seen before. And this is a companion one that I took at the same time. And of the two, I probably like this one better in the sense, they're like my children. I like them both for different reasons, right? This one is more kind of landscape-like and calm. Like I said, this one is a little bit creepy, but they're good for different reasons, right?
What's the camera?
Pardon?
What kind of camera?
If I can see what it is. This was the Canon EOS 40D. So this was taken quite a long time ago.
Wow.
This one is the same, I'm sure. This one is probably Panasonic because that's what this is a DMC G5 Panasonic. So that's taken a while ago. And these two were, it's a G7. So I used to say I'm a Canon girl because I had Canon gear for most of the years when I had analog cameras. And then I bought Micro Four Thirds and started doing, I started with Panasonic and I really liked the Panasonics. So for a while I had both. And I found that eventually I was using the Panasonic and not using the Canons at all. So I finally got rid of my Canons, although it was painful to get rid of my Canons. And now I shoot only with the Panasonics. And part of that is, the weight. I can carry 5 or 6 lenses on a belly pad, a stomach pouch, whereas you can't do that with Canon gear. So yeah. Any other questions? So this next set are these are icicles looking out my bedroom window. In this case, by the way, just so you know, this one I did enter into online competition, like I think Black and White, either Black and White or the Spider Awards. And it actually might have received an honorable mention or something. The thing about photographing icicles outside my window is the ones that were really interesting weren't necessarily right in front of my window. So I shot them on an angle because I had no choice. but then I skewed them straight, so it looked like you're looking straight on in Photoshop. And these have been run through. The only kind of software I own besides Photoshop and Lightroom is the Nik ones, the Nik black and white silver effects, I think. And that was basically because Google was giving them away for free for a while. But I play with it every once in a while, but I don't use it a whole lot. But in this case, I thought it really worked in terms of transforming these icicles. They feel very otherworldly to me. And I love the fact that I caught drips here. And the next set are just sort of odds and ends, fun ones that I wanted to share just because they're fun to share. I was sitting in my car. This I took with my cell phone, and I hardly ever take any cell phone pictures, but I was in my car waiting for the rain to end. And, I looked at this tree and I said, it's beautiful. The tinting of the windshield kind of added something, and you can actually see the little trees. I don't know if you can see them on your camera, on your computers or not, but you can see the reflection of the tree upside down in them.
We see them all.
Oh, okay, good. This one was somebody fishing on the side of the road on a foggy morning, and that's been processed in Photoshop using the circular polarizer. I don't know the name of it, but it's one of those distorting filters in Photoshop.
Radio, what is it called? Radio filter, something like that?
I can look it up later if you want, but it's like circular polarizer or something like that. But you'll find it because it's got circles in it. And it did require some other cropping because that filter tends to put some weird artifacts in the corners. So you have to crop a lot of that stuff out to get, I think, an interesting image. This one's kind of interesting because I was doing some self-portrait and I took this one and I fell in love with it and I cannot figure out how I did it. So I tried many times and I can't get these little kind of like light rays coming out the same way that they did on this picture. So this is sort of a one and only. And like I said, I wish I knew how I did it, but I don't. This last one is one, honestly, I've had it in my files forever. And when I was getting ready for this talk, I came across it and I said, I actually love this. But it's kind of weird. And so I've never shown it. But I love the textures. I love all these little, scruffy looking thing background and these little drips and these lines. And this thing looks like kind of like Swiss cheese. And then this thing looks like a little bizarre animal of some type to me, like a water animal or something. So I decided to put it in, but I'm not going to tell you how I made this one because I got so excited about it. I decided I want to do a series, and I'll tell you when I do the series. So those are sort of just some fun.
I've got an idea.
You have? Okay. What do you think it is?
You had grapes and you ate them all.
You got it. I didn't think anybody would be able to guess what that was, but yes, that's absolutely what it was. It's funny. You see, even your trash can be interesting, right? So don't throw away. Take a second look at the trash before you throw it out. But I'm very impressed that you got recognized that. I didn't think anybody would recognize it. So that's it kind of for in and around the house. And the next grouping I'm going to talk about is a series of images. And these are a series of images where I've studied a subject at length. And sort of one of the unique pleasures of shooting close to home is that you can revisit a subject over and over. And you can bring the pictures home, look at them on your computer, think about them, and then go out and shoot with more intentionality and kind of a better idea of what your final goal is. So this series is called Winter Woods. And this one actually won best body of work in a local the Phillips Mill Photographic exhibition, which is a local art show, photography show that's annual. But it tends to be pretty prestigious and pick up entrance from a good area of the East Coast. So I was very proud to get that award for this particular series. I'll talk a little bit about more how I made them in a second. The Winter Woods is a subset of something that I call dirty windows. And literally, this next 5 or 6 subjects are dirty windows. And I'll just run through these quickly and then talk a little bit more about them as I do. I found a kind of I don't think it was an abandoned building, but it certainly wasn't used very often. And it had a lot of windows and they were filthy. And basically, these are pictures of the junk that's on the window, the dirt. So I saw a series of these that they all look like trees to me. Some with rain, some with snow, some in a stormy kind of weather. This one feels like a blizzard to me. And I love the fact that at the bottom, it looks like there's a wood pile for the stove. This one feels like it's in an ocean or, it's on the ocean. This one too.
Are these infrared, Barbara?
No, these are taken with my G9, I think. May just finish the series and I'll take a look. But there was a ton of just, like I said, a ton of windows, and every window was a whole universe in and of itself. And this one is kind of weird. It's a little bit over sharpened on this screen, unfortunately. But I love the thumbprints. You can see the thumbprints or the fingerprints on this one. And then here's a plant in the background that to me looks like a giant spider. And I have a little guy walking through a very weird forest. So that's one of my fun ones. That one is not infrared. I take that back. Let me see if I can tell you what camera I took those with. It's because that's a print. Let's try this one. This is the G5, the Panasonic G5. You can kind of see why I like my Panasonics. They really give you excellent images. When I took these, I showed this to another camera club, and people were thinking, when I told them they were dirty windows, they were like, no, that's a real tree, right? I said, no. And they said, well, it must have taken a lot of post-processing. And I said, I didn't think so. But because the question was asked last time, I went back and I pulled a raw image of this particular one. And so here's the finished piece, and here's the raw image. And all of these dirty ones need a lot of added contrast, which you can tell. But in terms of changes, I crop it a little bit, but also these little kind of drips that kind of show that, links it to reality and makes it a little drip instead of a forest. I got rid of those. And so they just look like ghost trees in the background. So that's, that's how I did these. And this was a treasure house as far as I was concerned. I went back, I think, 3 trips on this one. So that's the series of the trees. And then here's a group that I called Under the Sea, because they look like little fishies there. These almost look like little tadpoles to me. And then this one kind of felt like a sunken boat or something under the sea. So then there was a series that felt like very much like Japanese paintings or illustrations. This first one was accepted into a show.
And these are all still dirty windows, Barb?
These are all dirty windows.
Wow. Okay.
I am not cleaning my windows forever now.
You know, I'd go out on a farm and find a really dirty barn or something with windows, unfortunately. And honestly, I have here listed maybe 4 subjects. I think I have like a total of 10, but I kind of shortened it just so you could get a feel for a few of them. Now,
throwing my Windex away.
Yeah, this group, I haven't decided how I feel about them. They are incredibly detailed and textured, and that's part of why I love them. I love all these scratchy marks that are in there. And this one I did not realize until I actually started processing it. You see here, I've got a little insect glued to the window. That was a happy accident there. And that was I composited 2 images to make a panorama for this one. But I love the sense. This feels like an old big tree in the background, and like this almost feels like a haunted, a Grimm's fairy tale wood. This series. That's probably what I should name them. Little hut in the woods. This felt like a door in a tree. Yeah, very, very like Grimm's fairy tale.
Show you how perception's in the eye of the beholder. This morning I attended an online talk by the Chief Scientific Officer of Moderna, all about how they developed their vaccine. And I have to tell you, one series you had, those were viruses.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, what you can see, Oh, and here I included this one. I sort of like it, but what I really, one of the reasons I wanted to include it is this is, anybody want to guess?
Marbles?
Pardon?
Marbles? No, but it's on a window.
Bubble wrap.
Bubble wrap.
So that gives you a sense of scale as well. But that was like those big bubble wraps, not the tiny ones, but the big ones that they have. But yeah, there's like I said, I must have shot, I don't know, like I said, 3 trips and maybe 1,000 pictures to get these. And like I said, this is about half of my finished series.
So you're out creeping around some old building?
It's it was like an old barn, or it wasn't a barn, it was like a shed, where you would store like your lawnmower and maybe a tractor and things like that. But it had a lot of windows in it for some reason.
It's always interesting when someone sees an abstract like these, what their first thought is. And the variation of first thoughts is remarkable. My first thought was, this is my mind after answering 8 hours of COVID questions at Piedmont Hospital. That's how I feel after 8 hours of it. So, there you go.
Yeah, I can imagine. Grimm's fairy tales, like I said. So that's my Dirty Windows series. And then this next series is on ice. And these were, let me start with the series.
Oh, were those all infrared?
The Dirty Windows?
Yeah.
No, the Dirty Windows actually were all a Panasonic, a regular. They weren't digital.
Unconverted G5.
This is taken with a G5. So I had a G5, a G7, and a G9, and a G8.5. So
your infrared is converted Panasonic?
I have converted my Panasonic too. I think I have a D3, and I think I converted this D5 to an infrared. But these were not infrared when I shot. These were when it was still a regular camera. Because it's hard to get, color with digital infrared, unfortunately.
I sold one of my Olympus Micro Four Thirds camera to one of our club members, Genario Morgan, who had it converted in COVID time, looking for something to do, had it converted infrared, promptly went out, took pictures, and won multiple ribbons with my camera.
Infrared is just a lot of fun. And one of the reasons I started with infrared is I like to travel, and of course there's the sunrise and sunset light. But midday, you sort of put your camera away and went and had lunch. but infrared loves harsh light. And so basically with an infrared, you could shoot in the morning and the afternoon with your regular camera and shoot midday with your infrared. And you could just be a happy camper. So yeah, it's kind of hard to carry all those cameras, frankly, but it's a lot of fun. This next set is a series of ice pictures, and this group is called a whiter shade. And this actually, are you guys familiar with Seeing in Sixes? With things work. This is actually accepted into Seeing in Sixes. Let me give you a look at it.
What is Seeing in Sixes?
It was a competition that Lenswork did, where you entered 6 images as a series, and they were judged by Brooks. I guess, what's his first name?
I don't know.
Whatever, the guy that is editor of Seeing in Sixes, but. He basically ran a competition where you entered 6 images. He picked 50 portfolios and published them in a book. And if you entered, you got a book, which was kind of cool. That's the price of entry right there. That paid for the competition.
He has a podcast called Lenswork, and recommended podcast that I put that's noted in the presentation I gave on podcast a couple years ago.
Okay. Yeah, and he did, in this case, I think he had like 3,000 entrants and 50 people were accepted into the book. And he did this for 3 or 4 years, and then he quit doing it, which is unfortunate because I thought it was a great, I loved the books. The books were just amazing to see what people did with their Seeing in Sixes. But anyway, so all of this series is from Frozen, what I call Frozen Universe. And they were taken all over one winter, and they were taken in my development, no more than a 10-minute walk from my house. And these I did on a tripod with my Panasonic G9, and I had a 12 to 60 millimeter lens, the Leica one. I did 6 trips around my development, and I was out anywhere from 2 to 6 hours. And one of the things I'll say about shooting is, you do have to think about, I'm going to start showing you these as I talk. You do have to think about your own comfort, because if you're not comfortable, it's hard to focus on what you're photographing. So these were all on a tripod. I took maybe 100 images on my first trip. Oh, and just so you know, I know how to dress for the winter because I snowshoe and I ski. But the key thing was I took out a little tripod chair, one of those portable tripod chairs, because frankly, my back and my knees could not tolerate being down on the ground for 6 hours, right? So the tripod chair helped tremendously, and it allowed me to stay out as long as, 6 hours one day. But I was fascinated with all the things that you could do with ice. And one of the things that I was talking about, how good it is to photograph locally, because you can come back and evaluate your images. The first set I took one image of each subject, and I got them home and I realized I liked them, but what I really, really wanted was edge to edge sharpness. I wanted everything to be tack sharp. And that's nearly impossible when you're working, with a close-up and a zoom lens, and even with a macro lens, it can be very difficult. So the second time I went out, and all the subsequent times, I actually took 5 or 6 pictures of each of these, and then I focus stacked them in Photoshop. Now, I think the camera will do that itself, but I thought my results were better than the cameras. So, and I do love these because they are sharp in every single corner. And that's, I don't know that you can do that with these kind of images unless you do something like stacking, or if you crop very close, because the edges of any lens are where you start to get distortion and lack of tack sharp images.
So these objects appear to me to be like grasses, are frozen in the ice.
Yeah.
and you're advancing your focus deeper and deeper into the ice. Then
I
you
probably wasn't
combine
that.
all of those with stacking.
Pardon?
You get photos deeper and deeper into the ice, and then you combine them with the stacking.
Yes. Although I don't think I was as intentional as trying to. It's really hard to get deeper into the ice, but I took a number of pictures and got now this to get the focus stacking really does help pull out the focus on the sharp elements.
One you just had that you had it for a second looked good for that. Had
You
a green-
pardon?
You had an image with a green bit of grass, I guess, right in the center. There, far, yeah.
Just yeah.
Well, that would work. So that gives that 3D character because of the focus stacking.
Yes, that gives it the depth of field. And I'm going to blow it up here for you so you can see, like, this is like huge, right?
Yeah, because focus stacking was developed from microscopy, where they'll have a section of tissue and they shoot at different focus points and then put it all together. And they've been doing that for a long time. And then they said, hey, everyday photographers can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does, like I said, it really does make a difference. The cameras can do it, but I did not find that the cameras did as good a job as I did. So let me go back to where I was. We got a few more in this one. This one was one that I took on the very first outing. And it is cropped because it's square, but I did have to crop some of it in order to get, the sharpness that I wanted. And that's the only time I got these little fuzzy balls. It's so odd. This one feels like a little landscape to me. Here's the sun, and then these are either rolling hills or possibly waves. They're just, and this felt very Japanese to me, like a Japanese print. And then I did take some that were just simple, because a lot of these are very complex in terms of the amount of detail, but they're fun because they're graphical and, the graphic nature of them. And again, you're right. These are a lot of these have little bitty bits of leaves or stems or something in them. This one was also shot on my first outing, and again, cropped in order to get the sharpness that I wanted in the elements. And actually, I had this group in the Frozen Universe. I belonged to a gallery, and I did a solo show with 40 images. I'm showing you about, I don't know, a dozen here. But this one actually turned out to be the one that was most popular, or that I got the most comments on, I'll put it that way, which kind of surprised me. But, it is kind of surprising to see what other people find interesting about your images. When you were talking about a sense of depth, this one has a lot of depth to me because this dark area you feel like you're going into the image substantially. And then these little balls were just a lot of fun. So, and then I also had a series out of this grouping that I called Ice Critters. And these were put in a group show. There were 5 of us with 6 images each, and it went into a nursing home. So I kind of had these fun images. This one I called Blackbird, and it got into either Black and White or the Spider Awards. I forget which, and won an honorable mention perhaps or something like that, or whatever. This one was my dragon. There's my walrus. There's my partridge. This one I called Early Bird Gets the Worm. And this one was the raven. So it's like I said, this was an investment in time. 6 outings. I probably shot maybe I don't know how many I shot. I'm trying to kind of estimate that. Several thousand images easily, right? Particularly when you're focus stacking all of them. Every image is 5 times the first one. So those are kind of it for kind of series. And sort of, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about a different aspect of abstracts. And actually, when Elsie first called me this is what she thought of when she said, I'd really love to see this particular set of images. And the ones I'm going to show you from now on out are highly processed. There's a lot of Photoshop involved. And they may not quite qualify as abstracts, but they do qualify, at least this first set, as all done in my house. And the first set I'm going to show you is called Perseus slays Medusa. And it's a Greek myth told in self-portraits. And the series has about 20 images. I'm going to show you maybe a dozen or so, half of them. And it came about from a classroom assignment to interpret the Perseus slays Medusa myth in photographs. And it probably took me a month to come up. I kept thinking about how to do it, and it took me a month to kind of settle on an approach. But then once I settled on the approach, there are, again, several thousand images taken for this series. But basically, they're shot with this is all infrared. So this next series is all taken with my digital infrared camera. And the infrared camera, I think, was key to making this work, because the infrared camera gives you that glowy, otherworldly kind of mythic quality, which worked very well with the mood of the series. And you don't see too many infrared portrait series because infrared portraits are sort of what I call transformative. They either can be very beautiful or they can be like really bizarre. And so that actually worked to my advantage in this case. So here are my characters. This first one is the Medusa herself, right? That's the woman that had, or the goddess who had hair made of snakes. So this is my scary and big hair picture. The next one was Zeus. Zeus wanted to help Perseus kill the Medusa. So, the white hair and sort of the heavenly background, I think, made that look sort of godlike, the father of all gods. Zeus sent Hermes to help Perseus, and Hermes was the god with wings on his feet. So there's my flying Hermes. And infrared does such cool stuff. Look at these little bubbles that showed up. Again, I didn't know I was taking them when I did, but when I saw them, I got all excited. This next one is, what's my next one? Hermes took Perseus to visit the nymphs of the north. And I think of nymphs as sort of ethereal creatures. So, and that's obviously 3 images stacked together, photoshopped together. This is a tilt image, tilt the camera. And then the nymphs told them to go see the Gray Sisters. The Gray Sisters had one eye between them, and they didn't want to tell Perseus and Hermes where Medusa was. So Perseus snatched Medusa's, the Gray Sisters' eye, and wouldn't give it back until they told him where Medusa was. So here are my Gray Sisters. And then I have 2 versions of snatching the eye. This one I really like because how creepy the hand looks in this one, but I love the eyeball in this particular one. So I still don't know which one I prefer. So after they figured out where the Medusa lives, the Medusa lived with her 2 sisters. So the 3 of them were called the Gorgon sisters, and Perseus and Medusa found them sleeping on the beach. So there's my Gorgon sister on the beach. And so Perseus managed to slice off Medusa's head and took off, flying off with Hermes. And the Gorgon sisters woke up, the 2 remaining ones, and took off after him. So there's my Gorgon sisters taking off after Perseus. And then I saved my Perseus photo for last because actually of all of these, believe it or not, this one was the hardest. And partially because I'm trying to portray, and I'm not, a young athletic male, hero, god. So I took over 700 pictures to get the following one. All infrared again. And I would take a batch of 50, look at them on my computer, and then say, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. So, the first was to kind of put my hair back in a little ponytail, and it sort of looks a bit masculine. but it was really shooting from below, which is sort of the classic masculine way of photographing. You shoot women from above, so they have to look up at you, and they have these doe eyes. And men, you shoot from below, so they have this strong jaw, right? So I realized I had to jut out my jaw and, sort of clench my jaw. And then then the eyes didn't look right. So I sort of said, well, I got to squint my eyes and kind of, pull my eyebrows down and I didn't frown, but, it was a lot of squinting. And I think the crowning achievement on this is what I talked about in infrared is it can be very weird. And in this case it is. My veins are close to my skin. And infrared just really pulled those out. Unfair, right? Kind of that English white color. So this kind of, I don't actually look like this in reality, but the camera pulled this out, and to me it looks almost like marble. And I thought it made a sort of a perfect addition to the concept of Perseus. So that's part of why I said, these kinds of images, I think the infrared just worked beautifully with them. So any questions on those?
I thought it was great.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
I actually ended up with a solo show of this series at the Princeton Arts Council. And that was kind of my again, one of my proudest moments in terms of photography. So.
In light of these, I recommend the original Clash of the Titans with Laurence Olivier playing Zeus, and although the effects are a little bit old for today, it's still a well-acted movie, so that's a movie that will coordinate with your photograph. The old movie Clash of the Titans.
Well, I think it's not that old. I think I just saw it a few weeks ago.
I think it was made in the 70s.
Was that Harry?
Well, there's one that's made since then.
Right. I like the original better because the actor.
Mike, is that real actors or stop action?
Well, no, they're real actors. Laurence Olivier plays Zeus, for example, one of the greatest actors of all time. So it's got great actors in it. Better than the second movie, in my opinion. Okay. But anyway, either's fine.
Yeah, there is two. One's called Clash of the Titans, and there's another one called
Wrath of the Titans.
Yes, those two I just watched recently. They're on Netflix or HBO.
The original is the one I'm talking about.
But anyway. They don't quite follow the story exactly like the myth, but that's okay. They were still visually, I thought they were very interesting movies.
That's an amazing series. Thank you for your work on that. It's just incredible. It's
one of the nice things about Princeton Camera Club is they ended up getting some very good teachers to teach, and we're running a lot of classes for a number of years. And the nice thing is they had classes at all levels. So a lot of camera clubs will have beginner classes or maybe intermediate, but few have advanced. And this camera club had several advanced teachers classes. And this was started off as a class assignment. So I was very pleased.
Perhaps this could be a theme for next year for our club along the similar lines for something like this a little bit.
Yeah, it's I think it really, at some point, I think kind of when back in that time, I think there were maybe 150 or 200 members of the camera club. And I think a large part of the reason they came is because there were so many classes. There were like a dozen classes or, 20 classes a year. Yeah. And so there was something for everybody.
Did it hurt when you did the pulling out the eyeball photo?
Nah, that's all fake. It just looks scary.
Doesn't hurt a bit, Daryl.
So the next series I'm talking about, I have two more series to show, and these are basically. By the way, I didn't mention this, but no, it's not the series. Something else. The next series is called In the City of Dreams. And I started doing compositing a few years ago. And this isn't kind of COVID proof, because I took a lot of images from my archives, from my travels, and all those images that you keep that you think you'll never use again. And if you start to look through them and you know how to composite, you can come up with some real nice derivatives. So even though these were taken during travels, a lot of them, this is a good thing to do during COVID when you can spend a lot of time at your computer and you can't, travel or do the other things you'd like to do. So this series was called In the City of Dreams, and it was shown in Collingswood Gallery a couple of years ago. And this is the titular, the starting image. And this was 3 pictures. One is New York City. That's a self-portrait. And then this was river reflections, I think, little, sun speckles on either a lake or probably a moving target, a moving river. This next one is titled Caged. And again, it's a composite of, I think, maybe 4 images. The next one is called Haunted. And actually, the little masks on the side, that's an inverted image. You might think it's an infrared image, but it's basically a color image that's been inverted and turned into a black and white. This one is called Athena Burns. And that one of that curtain picture I showed you at the very front, that's actually in here. You can see some of the elements of it.
Yeah.
This one is called Heritage. This one's called Evolution. This one's called The Ascent of Woman. And this has been accepted into a couple of shows or online competitions. This one is called Goddess of the Night. And this last one is called Transcendence. And most of these are 2 or 3 images put together, maybe 4 at the most. And then, any questions on this one? I'll show you one more, and then we're open for questions or whatever. This last one is a series called We Are More Than Our Diseases, and there's a total of about, I think, 20 images in this one as well. A subsection of these were accepted into black and white portfolio competition, and it's actually the story. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and a good photographer friend of mine passed away from ovarian cancer, and it's sort of kind of a story almost of it's quotes from our discussions over over the time we knew each other. This one is called We Are All on a Journey Toward Death. This one is The World Moves On. This one is called My Body Has Betrayed Me. This one is We Are More Than Our Diseases, and that's a self-portrait. And this one is Will I Be a Ghost of My Former Self? I See the Path Forward. And that's it. So that's kind of a depressing series to end on, but some of our best work comes from some of our most painful situations, right? So,
no kidding.
Yeah.
I can vouch for that. Totally.
I think
any questions or comments?
I think what impresses me about you is your enthusiasm and the love that you have for your work. Giving a good talk is easy for you because you love it so much and it's so part of you. And I think this last series is not depressing at all. I think it's very mindful and reflective and actually has a sense of hopeful acceptance. And I don't think it's depressing one bit.
Okay.
So I think it's great. I really do. I'm very impressed. You're just really creative and very enthusiastic and you clearly love what you do.
Yeah.
You have a passion for it.
If you want to see the whole series, most of these series are on my website, so you can take a look at the whole thing. I just didn't want to. I wanted to get through a lot of things, and give you a sample rather than give you, the whole series itself.
Yeah, fantastic.
Even though I was impressed with everything, your composites are astounding because they're the ones where you actually had a concept and put together these based on a concept as opposed to just taking photos and seeing what happens.
Yes, that's, intentionality. I'll keep sharing in case anybody wants to go back to any of the other images. But I think you're right. It's like these early ones that I talked about that are decorative. Those are fun, but they don't have the depth, the layers that something like the emotive ones are sort of the next step, right? And then these series where you're telling a story or, where there's a lot of, there's layers in terms of there's the visual that you see, but then, and the emotional impact of the image, but then there's the story behind it as well. So
Yeah.
these are the more complicated things I think to do.
I think your philosophy is just, well, my philosophy is just like yours. I think it's the emotional ones that impact our minds, our heart, our souls that really makes photography unique and special in many ways. I mean, it's transparency when you want it to be, or however transparent you want it to be. But I think for me, those are the photographs are the ones that you're going to want to take if there's a fire in your house. That's the ones you're going to want to retrieve. The pretty ones are bad to lose, but you can live without those, but you can't live with the ones that have meaning. So that's I think your point's well taken.
Okay. Yeah. Anything you want to go back to? Any questions about technique or anything?
What kind of lenses did you use for some of these? I mean, like macro lenses or anything like that? Like what?
You know what? I don't own a macro lens, believe it or not.
Really?
I own a couple of close focusing lenses. This is close focusing, right? This I shot with my G9 Panasonic, and this 12 to 60 Leica is a zoom lens that also has it's called close focusing. They don't call it a macro lens, but it focuses closer than the average image, the average lens. So I would say one of the reasons that I decided to give up my Canons is the Micro Four Thirds gives you more depth of field for a given frame. So it's a little bit easier to do close-up work without having a macro. These, dirty windows actually were taken a combination. I think some of them were G9 and some of them were Canon, or not maybe my G9, the G5, because that was a long time ago. Yeah, but some of these were Canon as well. I don't know which is which, but I think I started with my Canon gear and then realized the Panasonic would do the job, and it was a lot, lighter weight. And so I shot most of these with the Micro Four Thirds, and probably at the 12 to 60 lens. Although I think at that time it was the generic 12 to 60 rather than the Leica. And I do like, if you have Panasonic, that 12 to 60 Leica lens is really, really nice. Any other questions? Comments?
No, I really enjoyed it, as I knew I would.
Let me ask. So my impression is that when you think of, before you shoot something in general, you think about what you envision before you shoot it. I envision this. Let's see if I can make it happen. Maybe it won't turn out that way, but at least that's what I envision, at least before you begin putting the idea together in the form of photography. Like, is that how you work, or is there much serendipity in your work, or that's what I'm trying to
do? Some of each, I would say. There's a lot of serendipity because it's, part of the love of photography is just to go out and shoot, right? Without not making it a big deal and, planning exactly what you're going to take. I mean, there's a lot when you travel. You don't know what you're going to see. So it's being open to seeing the details, I think, right? I find traveling is more enjoyable when you photograph, in part because you're looking a little bit with more intentionality. You're looking for things rather than just sort of glancing at the passing landscape.
Here.
Yeah.
Here. Yay.
But I think I shoot a lot, and I didn't used to shoot a lot when I had film, and I think that's one of the it's an advantage and a disadvantage of digital because you can shoot a lot more and just experiment. But on the other hand, if you get lazy and quit and just shoot hoping you're going to,
Right.
get something, you have to kind of look at the same time. And when we were only shooting film, you thought about each picture you took more carefully than you do with digital, or at least that's my case. But on the other hand, I experiment a lot more with digital. So I have to remind myself every once in a while to really focus on looking at what I'm photographing. So that's, I guess, where the intentionality comes in. But I don't go out necessarily with the idea, well, I want to find X to photograph, right? Particularly when you're traveling. You just don't know what you're doing. That's part of the fun of traveling, is getting off the beaten path and being surprised. At least for me, it is.
Well, I'm just referring to the composites, and mainly composites that you come up with. That those are kind of thought out. You have this vision. Travel, of course, is going to be serendipitous more, but in terms of some of the stuff we've seen, it seems like you really put some thought into it before you did it.
Yeah, you do. You have that. Composites are really challenging because there is like a tremendous amount of thinking that has to go on first. And like I said, this series, I spent a month just thinking about the subject. I started off saying, maybe I could use like little dolls. And then I thought, oh, golly, that's really, that's kitschy, right? That's kind of silly. And then I thought, well, I can maybe use costumes, right? Capes and things like that to kind of, and then I thought, that's kind of gimmicky as well. And then I realized what I really wanted to say was portray the characters, but do it with gesture and expression. But it took me a month to come to that conclusion. So coming up with the concept was in some ways the hardest part. The photographs took a while too, but they were easier because once you have the concept, it's a lot easier to go out and focus what you're, photograph what you want as elements. For something like In the City of Dreams, that was put together. I had a concept of sort of the dream world, right? And that was just looking through my images and picking out ones that I thought would create, that looked kind of like something you would, iconic, like you would see in your dreams, right? And then this one, again, that took a lot of thought as well. And I forgot where that concept came from, how I came up with that one. I think the class where this teacher gave us the assignment, the next class, he taught 3 or 4 classes. And I think the last class he taught was for graduates of some of his former classes. And his comment was, I want you to pick a topic or subject that it will take you 5 years to execute. And so I tried this kind of in his class. I could not get anywhere with it. And it took me about 5 years almost, or maybe 3 or 4, before I kind of realized how I can put these together in a way that I wanted to. So that really, that challenge was very helpful, but it took a long time to think it through. Like, again,
Yeah, this series that you're showing, one thing that strikes me is the variety of compositions in the images in the series, and simultaneously the balance of the images compositionally, and the flow of one's eye in each individual image, but also the flow through the series.
Yeah, I just put the whole series together for you.
Right.
They're not quite in the right order just yet.
Right. Yeah.
No, they're not all here. Sorry, I'm missing a couple. But
we can interpolate.
Yeah. So you see some of the whole series, and yeah, it did. I guess when you have cancer, one of the things that's recommended is to journal, right? And I journaled, and then I talked to my friend Anne, and this is Anne, the woman who had ovarian cancer that passed away, and I'm sure Elsie remembers Anne.
Yes, I do.
Pardon?
I do.
Yeah, she was in Princeton at the same time that you were. Very close friend. She was like a sister to me. But she's kind of the inspiration for the series because she fought ovarian cancer for 12 years, and she always had a positive attitude. And physically, she had lots. She was in the hospital a lot with various infections and all kinds of, issues. But she always maintained a positive attitude. And like 6 months before she passed away, she went on a 50-mile bike ride in New York City with her grandson. One of these charity, drive for, to raise money for. I forgot what charity it was for. But her spirit was so impressive that's what I wanted to try to capture when I thought about doing the series. But it took 5 years to come up with the ideas and to think through how to put them together so that they weren't overly sentimental, but actually get at the kind of the emotional journey we take when we go through cancer. So
it appears your friend never really left.
She hasn't. She's still in my heart, definitely.
That's good.
So, in a lot of people's hearts, I would say. So yeah, these kinds of, this is part of the reason I left these to the last, because you're right, these are the ones that require more thinking and just there's more intentionality in them as well, say. And, I still like taking my beautiful, decorative type images. They're still fun, but they're all kinds of, sorry, that's not necessarily decorative, but all of these are fun things to take. But when I talked about, I think earlier I said something about, the nice thing about photography is, in reality, it's impossible to get bored, because, if you get bored taking landscapes, start taking close-ups. If you get bored taking close-ups, start taking winter pictures or whatever. And, when you get tired of photographing, then go out and start compositing. So there's just such a wealth of directions you can go with photography that I think it's a great passion is what I call it. Not a great.
You don't get bored if you're curious.
Yeah.
That's what distinguishes us from a non-genius. The geniuses are always very curious people, but not always curious people are geniuses, but geniuses.
Yeah. Any other comments? Do you want to open up? I see a lot of people are still muted. Do you want to in case they have?
Before we go, I want to announce that I'm still having the dinner party. Pardon me, Barbara. I'm still having the dinner party this Saturday at my place. It starts at 6. It doesn't actually arrive around 6. It's kind of arriving the first hour is fine. We don't have a lot of people showing up, so if you want to show up, that'll be fine. And it will be the safest COVID public indoors probably you'll ever experience, probably for a long time to come, because the precautions are extreme. So it'll be a safe environment. But if you can make it, if you can't, that's fine. But those who are coming, I appreciate it. So there you go. But it's Saturday starting at 6, right? Somewhere between 6 and 7 is fine.
Okay.
And I'll be sending details out about parking and so forth. Parking's super easy. So I'll provide details in an email upcoming very soon. So anyway, thank you, Barbara.
Okay, well, thank you guys. You were very, it's fun to have an audience like this that asks a lot of questions. It really makes the presentation feel more like a conversation.
Great. Thank you.
It was great.
Beautiful.
It was good.
Marvelous.
New ideas.
Yeah, you got me motivated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Barbara, one thing our club has done in past years, we did not do it last year because of COVID, and we haven't done it this year, but we started what we called a theme show, where each photographer would pick their own theme, and it would be just 3 images in a theme. But it was really kind of our effort to get our really good shooters who are capable of doing a portfolio and a series of images on whatever they're thinking about or come in contact with. I feel like our club needs to do more of that kind of thing, and seeing your examples certainly, pushes us that way. And
Yeah,
I heard your examples of, having the classes as a part of the club. I don't know, we're not necessarily big enough to have, a series of 3 advanced classes or something like that. But what would be your thoughts on pursuing this, sets of multiple images that can really express our creativity?
I think that's one of the things I admire about the Princeton Camera Club was its ability to kind of maintain an interest for advanced photographers, and that's a thing I think that a lot of camera clubs struggle with. People come in as a beginner, and then they learn and they become intermediate, and then they become advanced, and then they get bored and they leave. And you don't want to lose your really good photographers because you need all of those people to really make a camera club work. So I think, and finding teachers, like I was very lucky to have that opportunity. Finding teachers like that's very hard. But I think challenges like, it is relatively easy to capture a single image. Capturing a series can be really difficult because, like I said, I think that the trick to a good series, and I've won Best Body of Work at Phillips Mill twice. And so I'm sort of known for my series, but you want harmony and connection between all the images, but you don't want them to be boring. You don't want them to be the same image. So that kind of balance between diversity and linkage is a real challenge. There's ways to link, certainly the vertical lines do that. The color palette does that. The theme of the trees, the winter woods does that. But that's more thinking. That's sort of, kind of thinking something like this is really much harder. But, once you get past individual images like this, then I think the next step is to kind of start looking for series. And like, here's a good example of this doesn't work as a series for me because they're too similar, right? It's not a strong series.
Barbara, you're not sharing the screen, so I can't see it.
Yeah, let me do that again. Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, come on. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, so we got it now.
These 3 images, these 2 are too similar. One's a vertical, one's a horizontal. These 2 work, but, finding a third, I didn't really find a third, so this didn't work out as a series for me. But yeah, that's, I think, I was saying, the nice thing about Winter Woods is you've got that similarity between the lines and the color palette and then the theme that pulls them together, but they're all very different images. If you go to the trees, come on. Now my camera, there we go. Some of these start to get repetition, right? You could probably pull a series out of these, but, like those 2 are too similar in my mind. And these are similar except for the colors in certain respects. You could probably pull something out of this one, but in terms of a theme or a series. But I think that's a good challenge because it's sort of the next step of intentionality. Somebody once said, you can always get lucky and take one great shot, but to take several really good shots that are harmonious and work together as a subject is a lot more difficult. It's a lot more difficult than taking 3 good individual images because you have to think about all of those things that I talked about, harmony, but also diversity.
Barbara,
so I think it's a good challenge. I like the idea.
I have a question that's the inverse of what you've been talking about just now. One of the difficulties we have with our club is we've come to have a large number of very good to excellent photographers. And a newcomer comes in and they're intimidated. What did the Princeton Club do about that?
I think that the thing about the Princeton Club is it was big enough and it's in a good location. It's in Princeton. So there's a lot of scientists and engineers and people, that I think engineers and scientists tend to like photography if they're going to get into some kind of, art. and I think just because they had so many classes and they were geared, some of them were geared toward beginners, right? Rank beginners, how to use your camera. So having all those diverse, kind of servicing all three categories is what made it work. And it's sort of like once you get rolling, it sort of builds on itself. You get a few new members. The new members, feel welcome. They maybe see a course that they can take that doesn't feel intimidating, and then they tell their friends, and you get more beginners in. So it can be very hard to grow a camera club, definitely. I belonged to one many years ago, which had like 90 members at its height, and unfortunately, it fell apart because, as I said, the really good photographers got bored and left. And then I don't know. I think on their 15th anniversary or whatever, they had a huge fight over how to celebrate it. Believe it or not, and after that, there were a lot of hard feelings, and the club basically disappeared. So it happens, But I do think. The other thing is having, even if you don't, hire somebody to teach, even having a small session that for beginners, like where one of your more advanced photographers are willing to answer questions or demonstrate something on Photoshop or Lightroom, or, bring your camera in, and if you have a question, I'll help you with it. That's a way to kind of encourage people, beginners, to come in, right? I don't know how much you advertise and how many people are aware of your club. That's you need to have some kind of publicity so that people know you're there. Actually, are you kind of stable? Like you've been about the same group of people for 4 or 5 years or whatever?
Well, Mike Schaefer, our president, did a lot of effort in recent years to attract newbies, and did do some workshops, classes type things himself. But I just think what I've seen. I mean, I remember you talked about when you went to your first competition, and I remember I went to this group for a year and just watched, didn't put anything in, and then I put in my first photo, and it was cut into little bitty pieces. But I liked it, and I like the group. I like what we do, but we've had a hard time, even if we attract people, keeping them.
Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with COVID too. I mean, it's in the last 2 years, it's been that much harder, to keep people.
True.
Because we just don't have the relationships. Yeah, it's been so much harder. With so
We've
much.
seen, yeah, I think you're right, Mark. We've seen quite a few new people show up, particularly to our outdoor workshops, and hardly any of those we've seen on our Zoom meetings. So.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because I would think in some respects Zoom might be easier because you don't have to. You can sit in your pajamas and join a Zoom meeting, right? And it's not. You can sit there and not say anything. You can be very quiet as a mouse, and people are locked indoors and bored. So
I think COVID has really damaged our ability to recruit. I mean, you don't have that actual human connection with people, and they can't sense the kind. They don't. You can't garner trust on Zoom, and without trust, people aren't going to join a new group. So that's the biggest problem. I mean, we were really moving positively forward until COVID hit. Because a year before COVID, we had 19 new members sign up, which is way beyond anything we've ever achieved. And then COVID just really put a nail in our ability to recruit people well. You're not garner trust through the internet. You're just not.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Trust is essential for humans to want to join a group.
Yeah, how long has your club been active? How long has it been in?
51 years.
Really? No, how long has it been in existence?
51 years.
51 years. Oh my God.
The oldest in Atlanta.
Pardon?
The oldest in Atlanta, because our book was the 50th anniversary year.
Honestly? Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's about the oldest I know, period. Except for maybe like a New York one or something like that. Certainly I don't think Princeton is anywhere near that.
No.
Maybe
We're as old as Grandma Moses almost.
Yeah, you guys are.
We're made up of really stubborn people.
Jim's not one of them.
Not me. I'm not talking about me, but just in general. Yeah.
Well, you know what? 50 years is an accomplishment to be proud of, right? You'll have to. How many members do you have now?
About 40, I think 45, 46. But how many real active members? Not. I mean, that's cut down too because, I'd say maybe we usually get 15, 16 really active members, relatively speaking, but we have about 45, 40 right now.
Yeah.
And the club really didn't, at least my impression when I first joined, that they didn't want to get members. I thought they'd be flooded. And, you have to constantly be recruiting because most people don't participate when they join, and then they leave for whatever reason, no matter how well you do. So you really have to go out there and welcome people and invite them. And, again, it's all about trust.
It's been a friendly club too.
Yeah. We've worked harder on that. Yeah.
That is the founder speaking.
And a sharing club. The people who are knowledgeable do share.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're doing about everything possible, right? I mean, I don't know what more you can do. I think COVID has hit, lots of places very differently. I do give a lot of credit to the current Princeton club president because he started doing critiques online and member show and tells, and then it was series critiques, and he's got like literally 6 or 7 meetings a month where we used to have one. So he's really, I don't know how he managed to do it because you're right, it's really hard. I hardly ever go to those meetings because I hate Zoom, frankly. But it's the only way. I do go occasionally, but because it's the only way to interact right now. But I don't know how he did it because I'm just very impressed that he managed to build the club as much as he did despite COVID.
It's hard to get a horse to drink water when they don't want to drink it.
Yeah, and we always
it's the reality. And I certainly try to get people to drink the water, but what can I do?
I don't know about you guys, but we always found, for the most part, our membership are people that are close to retirement, kids out of the house, maybe retired, a lot of retirees. It's hard to get, 25-year-olds because they have just so much, or 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds even, because they have jobs and families and way too many other things on their plate,
That's true.
You pretty much defined us.
I think it's true of just about every camera club I know. It's mostly, it's that age set, right? Retired people and almost retired people that have kids that are no longer in the house. So, one of the things, there is a camera club, I don't know. This is something that really impressed me that they do. I don't know how they managed to do it, but it's called the Cheltenham Camera Club, and it's in a suburb of Philadelphia. And they somehow or another linked up with the Cheltenham Camera Club in England. And every year they do a joint competition where a judge judges images from both clubs, and they sort of compete with each other, right? And I thought that was a very innovative idea. Now, I don't know. I have no idea how you would find those people, but I thought, that was kind of a cool thing, right? Because they have this interaction with the club in another country.
I like the idea.
We could ask PSA to hook us up with, a club in another country.
Yeah, like Mongolia.
I'm sure they do that. Well, I'm thinking Ireland or whatever, but
North Korea,
Australia, or New Zealand,
or another club in this country.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's it's a way to swap ideas with another group of people, right? But yeah,
I hear a trip there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, eventually it's going to be, let's meet in person.
Well, let's mull over some ideas when we're at Mike's Saturday. Those who are there and those who aren't will, solicit your input and we'll try some more things.
Yes, it's going to be safe. Everyone has to be vaccinated. They have to bring proof of it, or you can text it to me or mail it to me, or not mail or email it to me. I'm using 5-filter MER 5 MRV 13 level filter system that's removing much of the aerosol particulates the size of COVID. And you can't be ill in the last 10 days. So it's the safest environment you'll probably have in the decades to come in a public setting, indoors.
Mike,
So-
I know we'll
Yes.
be allowed to drink while we're there, but will we be allowed to breathe while we're there?
Yes, the air will be as clean as it can be. I'm almost done building the filter right now. It's got 5 filters, so
All right.
it's going to be a fun it's called a screw COVID party. That's kind of the way I'm referring it to. So
Yeah, it's very depressing that, we thought in the summer, okay, we're on the downside of this. And it actually, when I put this talk together back in, I don't know, like June or July, I was thinking, this is going to be, I'm going to be like past, it's going to be, COVID's over. We don't have to worry about this. But as it turns out, it's turning out to be timely still.
I didn't think
Well, at this
I
group,
sure hope it gets easier in the next few months.
Well,
it's going to be
you know where
wow.
we live.
Yeah.
Where
Anyway.
we've got hospital ICUs at 95% capacity in the entire friggin' state.
I feel for you guys,
And surrounding states. Yep.
it's just, my family is in Kentucky. I grew up in Kentucky, and they're in bad straits too. It's just really, it's really scary. It's really scary.
Yeah.
New York went through that early on. Philadelphia never quite got that bad. I'll put it that way. And New Jersey has been pretty good too. We haven't had those kinds of just overwhelming. But there were times when 80 or 90% capacity of ICU. But that's when it gets really horrifying, because you know what? You do not want to have an accident or a heart attack or any of those other things, because you may not be able to get a room. You may not be able to get treatment.
Piedmont's at 85% capacity right now, going on 90.
Yeah, that's still too much. It can't, I don't know. It's the crazy world, who thought we would be here 2 years ago,
Alrighty. Well, thanks
you.
everybody. And again, if you want to
Thank
come
you
to the
so much,
gathering,
Barb.
let me know.
Right.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thanks, Barbara. You're a
Great.
star.
Thank you,
That was wonderful.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Ciao.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.